thoughtful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and
All the countries are listening.
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us for the first time here for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we're here now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. on Thursday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon, and also 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Always on top of the show, let me thank you for your thoughtful emails, calls, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired on Dialogue Houston, but particularly your great ideas for topics, guests, and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here on HCC TV, proudly now in our 25th season. Thanks to you, and we really appreciate those wonderful messages of congratulations on our 25th season as we began. We have a great show planned for you today. We're going to look at an aspect here in our wonderful Greater Houston community that is a gem to have in our own backyard. It has been for many, many years. It is growing and changing as we speak, and that is none other than our wonderful Lone Star Flight Museum. And here with me today is our wonderful guest, who is Lieutenant General Doug Owens, retired United States Air Force after 33 years of service, retired in 2013, and has been directing the museum since the last 3 years. It is just such a joy to have him on the show with us, and thank you, and welcome.
Thanks so much for allowing me to join you today. It's always exciting to be in this environment,
right,
and also to represent such a great institution as we have there at Ellington Airport.
How long has it been? How long has the museum been in existence?
Museum started back in 1990 as a private collection from Mr. Bob Waltrip, and he turned it into a nonprofit, started the building program down at Galveston in 1990-91, where it stayed until 2017, when we moved it to its new home at Ellington Airport. It survived Hurricane Ike back in 2008, but it pretty much survived with great damage. And we had wonderful volunteers put the museum back together. We flew the core of the collection out to save it, but the rest of the collection was had great damage.
Wow.
So they looked for higher ground. We found that at Ellington. We went into a capital campaign and a building program. And I joined the museum back in 2016, had the privilege of overseeing the build of the museum and the opening of the new museum and a new mission. So we're excited to be there.
Well, I haven't had a chance to see it in this new location in Ellington. I did see it at the Owens in Galveston, but I have a friend who went recently, and he really loved it. He's a retired Army person. He said it was just great to kind of just be able to see and touch the exhibits, and to have kind of this first-hand, up-front, close experience with it. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
We are fortunate to have a wonderful collection of something over 24 aircraft. Most all of them fly. We are probably one of the only museums of our type where we bring different aspects of learning together with a flying museum, and it makes us somewhat unique in that regard. We're the only thing that Houston has like this, so we are proud to be part of the cultural community of Houston and to bring our museum to the market as we have.
And you have great events throughout the year for children, for school kids, and really kind of educating them, because the need and understanding of aviation industry and professionals, particular jobs that are offered in that arena, are broader than most people think. So it's a great way to expose them to the whole atmosphere of aviation.
Well, that's absolutely true. We believe, we have our belief statement up on our wall, and it says, we believe that aviation inspires achievement and endless possibilities. And every young person that walks through the door, whether he's 2, 3, or 4, all the way up to 17, 18, and then the young kids at 60 plus, like myself, everything is possible.
Right.
And aviation has afforded such great change in the way we travel, and the way we communicate, and the way we live our daily lives, that anything is possible. And so we want to communicate that to our generation of today and let them know that everything is out there.
And a lot of young people are getting the word. I think it's Sterling High School that has the aviation program.
It's Aviation Sterling. It's Sterling Aviation High School.
Okay, so, that really trains young pilots, and a lot of people, those young kids, are getting their hours in and getting them in early and toward their pilot's license. Amazing.
This morning, I had two little boys, Carson and Bryce. Today was his 4th birthday.
Okay.
And his little brother was 2 years old. I got them both inside a beautiful PHI helicopter, the type that ferries oil workers out to the rigs out in the Gulf. And I let those little fellas up in that, strapped them in like they were going somewhere. And it was just great fun. And to see that twinkle in the eyes of young kids like
Right.
that. And then to be able to take that and jump way forward over time as we can influence these young people over time up to a point of making career decisions and helping them understand what life possibilities are out there as they mature and grow in character and in knowledge. It's just a great thing.
And I think particularly for young children of color and from the urban environment, aviation or the thought of being a pilot or getting your pilot's license was something until recent wasn't even on their radar screen. And to be able to be exposed to it at an early age to say that, yes, this is possible. I can do this. I can be one of these pilots. I can do it. I think it's a great thing that you're doing, starting with the youngest of the group.
We have several different organizations, including the Experimental Aircraft Association, OBAP, the Organization of Black Airline Professionals, that all come out and they sponsor flights for young people.
Ah, okay.
And so there are periods 3 or 4 times during the year where we will bring in up to 75 to 100 young people at a time and let them experience flight in a small airplane. It's a great opportunity for the youth here to learn about what aviation can afford them.
And there's even a Scout Merit Badge now that you can get.
There is. We have our instructors are qualified to do that. So we've had a number of sessions where we bring in the Boy Scouts to let them earn their aviation merit badge. We do scout overnights with the younger kids. And you've never lived until you've been and spent the night in a dark hangar under the wing of a B-17, and at midnight heard a ghost story about that B-17 starting up.
I love it. I love it.
It's a lot of fun, and the kids enjoy it, and they respond well in the environment that we've got for them.
Well, I'm an old explorer, Boy Scout explorer, and I'm kind of envious because none of this was available in my era when I grew up. None of it was even talked about as a possibility of being exposed to a young person like me in my little small town here in East Texas that I grew up. So I'm just glad to see that things have evolved to the place that they are now.
Well, we've just been registered as an aviation explorer post, so we will. We have just held our first organizational meeting last month, and in the fall we'll start up our formal program. So the idea with us is that we have formal school programs that we deal with the schools and home schools and private schools, where they make use of our Aviation Learning Center through formal program and teachers to meet organizational requirements. And then on the informal side, we've got various age groups that allow us to engage with them across the year groups. It's a great way to approach this.
And you have a showing of a wonderful documentary coming up. Tell us about that.
On September 25th, the documentary Cold Blue, which chronicles the men of 8th Air Force during World War II, who basically flew nonstop daylight raids over Germany from up through 1945. And the director found existing footage from the original documentary that documented the Memphis Belle.
Oh, yeah.
And found hours of film that was not used, was able to bring that out, update it, and produced a wonderful documentary that has, in the background, surviving members of B-17s and the like.
Wonderful.
It is a great thing. He's come to be here.
Oh, okay.
So this thing was out back in May in theaters for limited showing and on HBO.
I do remember that now that you mentioned
I
that.
went and saw it.
Yeah.
But the difference between what you saw then and what you'll experience at our museum,
Right.
I actually have one of the airplanes.
Okay, there it is.
We're going to open it up in addition to having the director there to talk about the film and show the film. And then the next day, the director's sticking around, and he's going to, Eric Nelson's his name, and he is going to be available for film students and hold a session with film students on the making of the documentary. So it's a great opportunity all the way around. And you can get tickets online at lsfm.org.
Right. And again, it's September
25th is the film, 26th is for the students.
Oh, you know where to be on that date. Let's talk a little bit about, as you see this evolving in the next few years and getting more schools and more school kids involved, you can only grow and develop, but is there a need for some extra help and volunteers and people who want to really become part of this movement? Because you're really creating a movement.
Absolutely, and we are very blessed to have probably 100 or so volunteers that run everything from our operations, because we fly these airplanes.
Okay.
So on the weekends we fly, and so we've got a cadre of volunteers that not only fly them, but do all of the groundwork. We've got volunteers as docents, volunteers that work in our education department and in our curatorial efforts. So we're very fortunate. If you want to volunteer, you enjoy kids, you enjoy aviation, you enjoy just being around history, come see us. And again, there's an opportunity on our website, lsfm.org, to be able to do that.
Something everybody can get involved in.
Absolutely, and we're thrilled to make new friends all the time, and we're always looking for great sponsors out there for the museum. None of this is cheap. We are a charitable organization, so we're always looking for support in every regard.
And I guess as we look to the future of aviation and the great changes that are occurring in our lifetime because of technology, it's really evolving to a state where it's going to be able to engage a lot more people, because it's getting to a point where it's getting not simpler, but easier to understand.
Maybe on the surface, certainly
Yeah.
on the surface, because what the average consumer sees when they're out with engaging in aviation-related activities, it is made more user-friendly.
Right.
But the engineering and everything that goes behind that.
So come
that is
see the
something
behind the
different.
scenes of how it all.
Behind the scenes stuff is what we're really interested in,
Right.
in addition to the customer
that's
service
what I'm
aspect of
trying to
this.
get at, right.
And so what we do in the museum, and our mission basically just states that we celebrate flight and achievements in Texas aviation, and we engage and educate youth in science, technology, engineering, and math. And so we are on mission, and we are doing great things for the city of Houston and 1 million young people in this region that we call our clients. So we are ready to go and make a difference here in Houston.
Doug, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being part of this and for coming on and talking about the wonderful Lone Star Flight Museum. You've sold me. That means I have to get out there, because I haven't been to the new location since you've been to Ellington, but I will be there, I promise. And everybody else, please come visit. As we say, come visit, see, kick the tires, touch the planes, get the behind the scenes understanding of how things operate mechanically and otherwise. But it is an experience. It's a family experience. It's an experience if you have any sense of aviation, any sense of history, any sense of actually wartime activities. It's a great way to kind of bring all that together. So it's the Lone Star Flight Museum. The information is on your screen. We look forward to you partaking in it, and stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
HCC. So many reasons, so little tuition. Register today at hccs.edu/now.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up, and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Welcome back to this segment of Dialogue Houston. If you're with us for the first part of the show, you know that you had a great conversation with the Lone Star Flight Museum. You must go see it out at Ellington Field. We're going to shift gears a little bit now, and very appropriately, because as we tape this show today, it is the 55th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King that talked about the beloved community, talked about how we as human beings should all get along and try to strive to understand each other better. It so happens that the wonderful bishops of the United States Catholic Conference have put together a pastoral letter that came out last year on race and racism. And to be able to dive deeply into that pastoral and understand all of its implications for us as human beings, as we try to live out the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King of the beloved community, we're happy and proud to have the University of St. Thomas on September 21st, coming up very soon. It's going to do an all-day conference at the University of St. Thomas entitled Grace and Race, an Encounter with Our Open Hearts. I didn't get that quite right because it kind of goes back and forth depending where you want to start. If you want to start with race and grace or you want to start with open heart. And I do that a little bit because it kind of depends on where you are and where you sit and where you stand. How do you see the event? To help us understand the event, Open Wide Your Hearts, an Encounter of Grace and Race, is our wonderful Associate Director of the Center for Faith and Culture at the University of St. Thomas, Carlo Romero, who's been intimate in putting this together, who has been kind of the spearheader behind all of it. And so Carlo, just so glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
I stumbled a little bit there on purpose in the beginning because you and I have talked a lot about the context of this thing we're going to do on the 21st, that it has to be couched in the right context. Mm-hmm. And it struck me as I was driving over to tape this segment with you this afternoon that it is today, August 28, 1963, when Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech, that talked about creating the beloved community. We're going to talk a lot about this because we're leading this conference with the heart and love and encountering grace and race. But tell us how you see what we're going to experience on the 21st in the context part before we talk about actually the text of it.
Sure, thank you, Larry. I think we're going to see a really beautiful opportunity to unpack the rich contents of this letter. This letter is something that I think is echoing in a lot of communities all around the nation as we try to do something proactive, something according to civic duty, according to our Christian ethics and values, to really acknowledge our common origin and our common destiny as children of God. And so we have the Bishop Fabre, who's the chair of the ad hoc committee on racism in Washington, D.C. coming down, as well as the associate director. We're going to have a series of other speakers and facilitators to, of course, help us go deeper in that conversation. So I totally agree with you that this is a beautiful day to be discussing this and to be examining this and to be exploring further how we can really come together as a more perfect union as Americans.
And because we know God has a great sense of humor, this conference was actually planned months and months ago, the beginning of it, long before we've gotten into where we are with this divided country, with all the blatant racism we see and all the fear of the other, which in many cases is unfounded, but nonetheless there, and how we see the other, not as the human being in Christ-like as we should, but in the fearful sense of not knowing who the other is, therefore we fear them. So we're going to talk a lot about that in the conference to try to, in this country right now, that we're so divided, we're so in this mode and moment, as I call it, because I don't think it's going to last, but we're going through this kind of middle passage again about how we see and interact with each other as human beings. The conference is going to address some of that, is it not?
Absolutely, Larry. That's very well said. I think we've seen a lot of developments recently in the news, et cetera, that really, we weren't really exactly looking at that, a year ago or many months ago.
Right.
But it's very timely now, perhaps almost prophetic, that we as a people, as American people, as a people of God, we're coming together to say, okay, what can we do about this? How can we shine a light in the darkness of the situation in our hearts and our communities around the world?
Because it is really, the title says it all. It's Open Wide Our Hearts, an Encounter of Grace and Race. It's really what's in your heart and how you see and understand the other, someone different than myself, defining what the other is, and how you understand that person both historically and presently, and how you will interact with them going forward in the future. Because the heart, I can't know what's in your heart, you don't know what's in my heart. All I can judge you by, and judge is not the word, the only thing I can see is your action and behaviors. So telling someone that you love them, no, just show me, right? Use words only if necessary. So the question becomes, in this world of race and racism that we're in now in 2019, in August and September, the year of our Lord 2019, how do we get people to understand that it's not enough just to be non-racist, you have to be anti-racist. In other words, you have to live your values. Speak up when you hear something said negatively about the other. Speak up when you hear something said that is a racist statement. And we're called, particularly as Christians of all denominations and non-Christians, to speak up when we see it and when we hear it.
Thank you, Larry. I mean, this symposium exactly will be trying to empower people to have tools to be more proactive agents of change in their communities. So we're talking about that ability to listen, a dialogue, the ability to have maybe a crucial confrontation, just like you're saying there, right? How do you have that encounter with someone? And like you said, what's in your heart? What's your attitude towards yourself, your neighbor, and your community? Are you living in a state of fear, an uninformed fear, a completely irrational kind of biased fear? Can we provide a safe space to confront that in a way that you can realize that there's something beyond that fear?
Yep.
And there's more that unites us than what divides us.
And the fear is there because we haven't taken the time many times to develop relationships of mutual trust and respect with the other. And we're very limited in our contact. Now that schools are resegregated, secondary resegregation of schools, number one gated community in the United States is Houston, Texas. So the chance to interact, to develop those relationships where you understand the other as a human being and not just the other, is driving the negative narrative of the fear, and it's a classic definition of the fear, I think, at work here, that we've all learned: fear is false evidence appearing real, because you don't know. So you're going what the media tells you. You're going by what the social media tells. You're going with these little things we carry around called our phone, how they talk about the other, rather than developing a relationship to know and become that thing we say, a stranger is only a friend I have not met yet. To really spend time to get to know the other.
Well said, Larry. And I think to add to that, part of this fear context is probably a belief there's not enough to go around, right? The zero-sum game.
Yep.
So you create a tribal context of, well, it's either us or them. It's my group gets something or your group doesn't get
Right.
something. And actually this is kind of a historic problem, I think, for all nations, really. But we see it in a special way in America because we have a very unique culture,
Yeah.
a very unique, diverse culture.
And we got to be able to speak to that unique, diverse culture, because that's what got us into this. Slavery is the thing that has gotten into us having this conversation still in 2019. So we have to deal with the sin of slavery. We have to talk about that legacy that we've inherited because of slavery, and move to why the phrase about privilege is there, and the word in front of it is white privilege. White privilege is all tied to the history of this country when it comes to dealing with people of color. And so you can't go forward until you're willing to admit some of the past, understand that the past informs the present so we can have a brighter future together tomorrow. That's what I think South Africa finally realized when they had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You had to deal with the history, accept and understand the history, so you could have a chance to reconcile, to forgive, and go forward. We haven't done that as a country. And this pastoral and the pastoral that preceded it in 1979, Brothers and Sisters to Us, talks about this historical lens that we have to view today's current discussion of race and racism in. And I think we're trying to do that with some of the workshops we have and some of the speakers to really look at that whole legacy.
Absolutely, Larry. We have certainly a looking backwards and a looking forwards, looking at the present. We want to combine all those factors because it's a very complex issue. And as you point out, there's been some steps towards really trying to acknowledge and recognize things that maybe haven't been really recognized, or they were kind of, we thought they were lost in the history books, but they really need to be brought out into the forefront to be able to be addressed in a way that can allow us to move forward together as a people together.
And to just be honest about it. It's not pointing fingers. It's not calling anybody in the past good or bad, evil or whatever. I think when Georgetown University admitted that the school is built and financed on the back of slaves and slavery, which they recently have done, and it has started a wonderful dialogue as to the history of that part of the church's involvement in that, which is fact, which is history. It's not a question of whether it's good or bad or evil or shouldn't happen. You have to acknowledge it, though, to be able to move forward. This year is also the 400th anniversary of the end of slavery, 1619 to 2019. We just celebrated the 400th anniversary this weekend in Houston and across the United States. Church bells rung on the afternoon, Sunday afternoon between 2 and 3 o'clock to recognize that this piece of history has to be dealt with as we go forward in our current discussions of race and racism. And so I'm just so happy and proud that, first of all, the University of St. Thomas and the Center for Faith and Culture has decided to do this. I think it is a wonderful gift to the city of Houston and to the greater community. And to be able to engage in an honest dialogue about this and to learn some techniques and skills as the workshops are going to present itself on how to have these difficult conversations, critical conversations, is going to be so important. So give us the details real quick of when and how and who and how they can join up and sign up and participate.
Sure, happy to, Larry. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, so as you can see here, hopefully you can see this. We have a registration link here, www.stthom.edu/grace-and-race. Please feel free to register there. We have $20 general admission, includes lunch, and $10 for students. So if you have students, people in college and other kinds of study programs, it'll be on September 21st. It'll be a full day event, so we'll also have some snacks and other kinds of things involved. And on the back here, you may not be able to see this as clearly, but really what's nice, you have multiple options to choose from in terms of what you would like to go deeper in.
Right.
And really we're dealing with different things like race in the classroom, critical conversations, developing intercultural competencies, these kinds of things. So really beautiful opportunities to really grow and make new friends, I'd say, have an encounter, and hopefully have an attitude that really can be very expansive to grow through this.
We're out of time, Carlo. Thank you very much. We look forward to you being there. I'll be there. Everyone that hopefully will join us. If you forget all that website, you can go to the University of St. Thomas website, click on for the calendar, go to September 21st. It'll give you a link to register for this conference. There's going to be a follow-up. I got to mention that because we don't believe in one-shot things. There'll be a follow-up, two of them actually, one on October 5th at St. Teresa's Catholic Church in the Memorial Park, and one on September 9th on Wednesday evening at the Houston Public Library downtown from 5:30 to 8:30. The other one is Saturday morning from 9 to 12. We'll talk about that at the 21st. Let me just close with this real quick. It is imperative that we understand that this is not about guilt, pointing fingers, or blaming anybody for the past. It is about what we're going to do going forward together as a people. It begs the question of human beings in relationship to other human beings. It begs the question as an ethical question, which is poised, quite frankly, honestly, on the campus of a Catholic university, because that's a good place to talk about ethics. What is the fair and ethical treatment of all human beings? We've got to have that discussion. We haven't been willing to have that discussion. What is the fair and ethical treatment of all human beings? If we have some baseline understanding of what that looks like, we can add the second and third part. All human being lives matter. All human beings are equal. That's what it's about. It is about us in relationship to other human beings and understanding the essence of human beingness. Come join us on September 21st, University of St. Thomas, 9 to 5, all day. We're going to dive deeply into this subject matter. We look forward to you being there with us. Until then, as always, peace, power, and love.